Hey guys, I'm David with Media Unlocked, and today I'm going to be going over part 3 of the Canon T3I walkthrough, and this part 3 is all going to be about the video settings. Now I know a lot of you guys out there have been waiting for this, so I'm really excited to do this video. So let's dive right into it. So the first part of part 3, we're going to go over all the buttons here on the back and what they do, and then we're going to go over all the menu settings. So by the time I'm done talking today, you should have a better understanding and knowledge of the Canon T3I and how to work video. All right, so let's start here. We'll start to the far left to work our way over. So of course this is the menu, and it just works like the M setting when you're taking photos. You got all of your settings you can go in there. But we'll go over that here in a minute. Next is the info button. So let's start without anything on the screen. So you've got nothing on the screen, but say you want to add in some of your exposures and settings so you can see kind of what you're shooting at. So we can start down here. If you notice, this is your shutter speed, your aperture or f-stop, exposure, and your ISO. Now all of these do change the same way they do with the M mode. You can hit the ISO button, so I'm going to click the ISO button, and then I can go to 100 ISO, I can go to 400 ISO, 200. Do that. Same thing with the f-stop, hold the AV button down, scroll your wheel. If you're going to notice, this number is going to change. So now it's going to get a lot brighter because we're bringing our F down. We'll put it back up at 11. And then if you notice, without touching anything but just using the dial up here at the top, you're going to notice your shutter is going to change. Now when it comes to video, you really want to keep your shutter at the lowest possible setting unless you're going to be doing 60 frames per second or 50 frames per second shooting. We're going to be doing slow motion. Then from my understanding, you want your shutter double what frames per second you're doing, but you can bring your shutter up even more than that so that you can really slow it down in post. All right, so then we can hit info again. And now these are kind of like shortcuts. You can do all these settings in the menu, but these are fast shortcuts that you can use here in the video setting. And the way they work is if you push the Q button, and you can scroll through. So if I want to change my picture style, I can go to like definition 2, or I could go to auto, standard, portrait, landscape, neutral, faithful, monochrome. So maybe I want to shoot in black and white monochrome. I have that option. We'll go back to user def 1. You can switch your RAW. You can switch if I wanted to be shooting at 60 frames per second. You actually use the dial. The bottom part does this zoom in. So if you notice there, I'm using the dial, and let's pick 60 frames per second. And then this bottom part, there we go, and we're set to 60 frames per second. And then video snapshot is off, but you can set it to 2, 4, and 8 seconds. And that's just kind of like a snapshot of the video, and it's a short clip that you can kind of do. I don't use video snapshot whatsoever. Back to info. We'll hit it again. So now you've got all this information here. You've got this information here, and you can do the shortcuts. And you've got your histogram. And if we hit info one more time, it's all gone, and you're back to a blank screen. All right, of course, most of you should know what this does is, it does your recording. So if you push it, now I'm recording video on the T3I right now. Push it off. Next, we're going to jump right over to these bad boys right here. Now what these guys are great for is zooming in and getting your focus the way you want it on manual settings. So let's zoom in. As you guys can see, this box right here is completely out of focus. I have my lens set to manual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the front of the lens, and I'm actually going to move my focus ring. And I'm zoomed in to a 10, so I'm really close. And if you notice, that looks like it's pretty well focused. We could probably just focus it in a little bit better. That's probably the best focus right there. So then I'll hit my zoom again, I zoom out, and now my shot is in focus. So say you do zoom in and you want to be zooming in, or you want to focus on something very specific. So let's zoom in ×2. There we go. We're zoomed into 10x, and you can actually use these little dials right here to move around. So, and as you guys notice, you just zoom right in. You can get the perfect focus point. That's really well focused right there. And we'll bring down the f-stop a little bit here, so it's a little more, the composition's a little bit better. And that's how you're going to be able to focus. So this is a great way to get your focus points right. So if you're doing a shot where you have some time to actually do some setting up, then you can zoom in, put your lens on manual, and then use the ring, and that's going to work. Now, anybody that has a Magic Lantern, they have something called Magic Zoom, which is very similar, and it works very well. Another thing is you can use the arrows to, again, set up your pre-set up your focus point. So I've got the arrow set here. If you notice, the little box is there, so when I zoom in twice, it's going to put me right on that box. Or if I want to go in here, and I'll be over to the far right, it's going to put me right there. So that's what those arrows do right here. And then, of course, you've got, if you need to go in and look at your previous shots, and if you want to delete something, you have that option as well. Now, when it comes to auto-focusing with this camera, number one, it's noisy. It doesn't really work that well, but anybody that's just diehard, I have to autofocus, or wants to do an autofocus, like a pre-focus, you can put your lens in automatic focus, and then I'll just hold down the shutter button halfway, like I normally would with a photo, and it's going to try to focus on that white piece. And again, it's going to focus on where that square is, and that square is right smack dead on that white backdrop, so it's not going to be able to focus. There's no information for it to really focus on. So if I want to make it focus on, let's say here, it should be able to focus that. And there you go, it focused in on the box. So if you wanted to use autofocus to pre-focus, you can do that. I prefer manual focus. I think it works a lot better. All right, so part two, we're going to go through the menu settings, and then we're going to be done with the T3I walkthrough, and of course, leave comments and messages, and if there's anything that we miss on this part or this part that we just did, you can ask me, and I'll tell you how to do it. Anyway, so I'll be right back with part two, guys. Okay, guys, so now we're in the video menu settings, and let's kind of run through all of them. Let's start right up here at the top. First is movie exposure. I have it set to manual. You can do auto, so it'll automatically try to expose your video, but it doesn't really work that well. Just keep it manual. You really should not be trying to shoot video with this thing automatically, because it's just really not made that well for it. But if that's what you want to do, throw it in automatic and have at it. AF mode, I've got it under live mode right now. AF with shutter button, I have that enabled. So shutter button AE lock, I've got it on the AF AE lock. You've got a few other settings here. Remote control, I have that disabled. And then your highlight tone priority. You can enable it or disable it. It just has to do with really what it says, your highlight tones. It's going to make your shot, I believe, from my understanding, a little bit warmer with it enabled. I've always just left it disabled. I probably should try shooting it enabled and see if I see a difference. Under the next setting, this is how you set up all your different frames per second. You have 30 frames per second, 24 frames per second, 60, and then you have 30 at 640, which, what is that? Let's see here, 640. That's at 30 frames, 640 by 480, so you don't want to use that unless you're doing something real low quality and you want to do it on purpose. I leave mine in 1920 by 24 frames per second, and then you can do the zoom. If you notice down here, you can go in and you can set it up so it's zooming in really, really close. If you know, that's how it's actually going to shoot. So we'll go back to menu. I'm going to turn that off, and then I always leave it on 24 frames per second. Sound recording. So, number one, wind filter. Go on and disable that. You really don't need your wind filter, or you can enable it. It just has to do with there's a lot of wind. Like I'm shooting here indoors, I really don't need a wind filter, so I have that disabled. If you're shooting outdoors and it's real windy and you don't have an external mic, which you really should have an external mic, then go on and throw the wind filter on, and it will help you out with your audio a little bit. But it's really, the manual audio or the onboard audio is really not that great with these cameras. And then you can do your record level. So this is one of my favorite parts of the T3I, is that you do have some control over your sound recording. You can turn it to automatic or disable it. So if you want to disable sound, you can do that. You can do automatic sound. It will automatically try. But you see, it's making me peak right now as I'm talking. I don't want to peak if I was actually recording audio with the T3I right now. So I'll throw it in manual. And right now I'm not peaking. I could bring it up just a little bit. So we'll set it there and maybe just a tad bit more. So that way I'm right before I start peaking. If I go, woo, you see that, I'm really peaking there. So if I'm talking in a normal voice, this seems to be where I want my audio levels at for the T3i. So if you are using these manual settings, make sure you double check before you start shooting, have your actor talk a little bit, make sure your audio levels are good. You want to have them right around here. As you notice, that's where you want them at. So if they're going too high or if they're going too low, you need to adjust accordingly. So if it's going too high, I would bring it down. That's going to make me really quiet, and that's going to bring me a little too far down at the present volume of my voice. Let's hit menu and go back. Metering timer. Honestly, guys, I did a little research. I couldn't exactly figure out a good answer to what metering timer is. So this is one of the few functions on the camera I'm not 100% positive about. So if anybody knows or can explain metering timer to me a little bit, I would appreciate it. And that way I could repost it on Facebook or something. So any of you guys that want to know what it is, I will try to get the answer for you. The same thing as the manual mode, you got your grids. If you want to do a grid when you're shooting, you can set up grids as well. So I'll turn my grid off, and then the video snapshot, you have a 2, 4, and 8 second. I don't use video snapshot at all, but mainly what it is getting a really fast, like 8-second video, which I really don't understand the use of that whatsoever. All right, so you have your exposures. Again, you can go in and you can mess around with your exposures. Auto light optimizer, I keep it in standard. Again, you can mess around with these settings, see if you like one better than the other. Standard just seems to be the correct one to do. Custom white balance, again, if you guys want to know how to do a custom white balance, I will put a link right here so that you can go over to my custom white balance video and learn how to custom white balance your shot. So I use Magic Lantern to custom white balance, but for people that don't have Magic Lantern, then you're going to have to manually do it. Picture style, again, I keep it on user def 1, especially for video. I've actually downloaded a specialized picture style so that it washes out some of the colors, so that when I put it into Adobe Premiere, I can make for color correcting, it's much easier because my colors are very, very washed out. And that's what I like to use as far as picture style. One of these days I'll do a video on how to install a picture style into like your T3i or T2i so that you can get the best possible color out of post when you do the editing. But you do have other options like monochrome. You can shoot in black and white. If you want to shoot your video in black and white, you do have that option. Quality, I just, again, keep it in RAW, but you can change just like in the M mode, you can go through and pick the different ones you want. Beep, I have that disabled. Shutter release without card, I have it enabled. Image review, I've got it set to 4 seconds, so if you want to, after you've taken an image, it'll be up on the screen for 4 seconds before it pops off. And then again, this is going to correction on make sure you have the right lens, which of course is the exact lens that I have on the camera, so that's good. And then this pretty much these are the same ones as we did in video 1. You can protect your image, you can rotate your image, erasing images, print orders, creative filters, and then you can resize. The creative filters, you just hit set if I remember correctly, and then you can pick your creative filter. So histogram, and then you can go histogram, image jump. I've got it to 1 image, slideshow. You can rate your image. This has to do with bass boost for output to a TV. You can add a little more bass into it, and then just control over your HDMI right there. I've got it set to power off, so that means the shutter will close down and my camera will go blank screened, and you get that clicking sound after 2 minutes. Auto rotate, you can format here. And then file numbering, I've got it set to continuous. That means every time I take a picture or I actually make a file, it's just going to add another number to it. So whatever number I'm at, actually let's just snap the shot right there. So I've taken 8,573 photos with this camera because I've just used the continuous the whole time. You can set up folders, and then LCD brightness, date and time, language, NTCS. Now you do want it on NTCS if you want the 60 frames per second. If you want 50 frames per second, you can switch over to PAL, and then I'll actually show you what that looks like. So now I only have 1280 by 50, and then I've got 25 frames instead of 30, and 25 on this instead of 30. If we go back to, change it to NTCS, switch back over, now I've got 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, set back up. And then feature guide, I've got that disabled. So guys, that is my walkthrough of the Canon T3i. I do hope it helped you out. Again, if there is something that I went over that you didn't understand or something I somehow skipped that you wanted to know, leave a comment, send me a message, or email me at mediaunlocked101@gmail.com. As well, check us out on Twitter and Facebook. We're always posting some cool stuff up on both of those websites at DAVIDDIMAGE that you don't get to see here on YouTube. I really do hope this helped you out. And you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you at our next video.